So I won't lie, it's pretty surprising me that we still haven't seen any movement or hardly any rumors for that matter when it comes to anything else going on with the Bulls this offseason outside of trading Lonzo Ball and re-signing Trey Jones to a modest deal. The biggest items going into this offseason, namely the contract extension for Josh Giddey, the futures of both Coby White and Nikola Vucevic as trade candidates, two players that were reported to be heavily discussed prior to the trade deadline this past season. We still haven't heard anything about these guys so far this summer. But with the free agency moratorium now passed, most free agents around the league having been signed, we're still hearing little to no traction on any further moves coming from the Bulls. It was reported prior to the start of the weekend that the Bulls and Giddey are still far apart on a new deal, although I have an odd feeling we're going to get the news on Josh Giddey in the next 24 hours. I don't know why, just a hunch on that one. Obviously, reports on the beat are saying they haven't heard much chatter on Coby White and the trade front there. And then also, there's been a lot of talk about how there is zero trade interest around the NBA for a potential trade deal involving Nikola Vucevic. So much so that the Bulls could have to settle for working out a deal and buying him out of the final year of his contract, where he is owed $20 million. And while I've seen some national talking heads suggesting this, as well as a lot of Bulls fans liking the idea of Vooch being bought out, being rid of Vooch on this roster, moving on from the last piece that no longer fits this current timeline and being done with him, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news that are in that camp, but there is zero interest that the Bulls will resort to buying out Vucevic's contract. Absolutely none. And I'll explain why in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you all had a great 4th of July as well, by the way. Now, we all know that Vooch's days are numbered in Chicago. 4 seasons, really 4.5 if you include the brief stint in the 2020-21 season when the Bulls traded for him at that deadline. Vooch, while he's always been a productive player, always kept things professional, and while he's had some nice moments here and there with the Bulls, his time with the team just has not worked out. And trading 2 first-round picks, 2 lottery picks, have shown why this is a failed trade when you consider the Bulls only have 1 playoff appearance to show for it during his time with the Bulls. Be all that as it may, though, it's now in the past, and the Bulls now looking forward on a new direction, a new timeline. It's now time to move on from their starting big man to truly embrace this youth movement. Now, of course, Vooch has been in trade rumors for quite some time now, dating all the way back to the 23-24 season, and most of us thought at this past trade deadline, Vooch was absolutely going to get moved, probably even more so than Zach LaVine. And it was in large part because Vooch was having quite a bounce back year, was playing some of the best basketball since his Orlando days, and at the time of the deadline, there were a handful of contending teams that were in need of a big to really get them over the top, most notably the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Suns. But the deadline passed and Vooch remained with the team, and it comes out after the fact, like we've seen so many times with this front office, and hell, even from the previous front office for that matter, the Bulls continue to overvalue their players, ask for too much in a trade, they end up not being able to make the trade, and then end up having to settle for less down the line. Because according to a lot of reports, it's believed that the Bulls were demanding a first-round pick in exchange for Vucevic at the deadline, which, okay, bold, good to have a high starting asking price, but like, come on now. As good as Vooch was playing at his age and his defensive deficiencies, you can't possibly expect to get a first-round pick for this guy. Something like a couple of second-rounders would have definitely been doable. And now with the Bulls having to lower their asking price to even just 1 second-round pick, the market having all but dried up for Vooch, they now find themselves in a position where they either have to keep Vooch and have him play out the final year of his contract, or, of course, the other alternative, buy him out. Here's the thing, what I always like to remind Bulls fans, or any NBA fan for that matter, the Bulls are owned by Jerry Reinsdorf, the biggest penny-pinching businessman of all time. A man who shudders at the thought of throwing away money to not have a player play or not have a coach coach. The man who will gladly sell off second-round picks for cash that provides no team benefit whatsoever except to line his own pockets. You think he's going to be okay with the team buying out Vucevic's $20 million contract? Like, it would be different if Vooch was washed, was holding this team back, or worse, his salary was putting them above the luxury tax line, but no, Vooch is still a very serviceable player. He's still a starting level center in this league, and from a payroll perspective, it actually serves no benefit to the Bulls if they buy him out or not. It's not like they suddenly gain $20 million in cap space by buying Vooch out. No, they're still an over-the-cap team, or will be once they re-sign Giddey to a new deal. The most it does to the Bulls is it gives them a little more flexibility by using the mid-level exception to sign a free agent. But even then, with the limited free agent market right now, who are they going to sign that would even make it worth it to ownership to eat a bunch of money to buy out Vooch? Because that's the other thing. Players don't walk away from money that's guaranteed to them. They're only willing to sacrifice a little bit of it if it means they can make up for it or break even on the new team they sign with. So buying out Vucevic means the Bulls would likely have to give him $50 million of his $20 million at least for him to even entertain the idea of leaving, because he knows wherever he goes, if he becomes a free agent, the most teams are going to be able to pay him on the open market is something in the vet minimum to $5 million a year range. That's just all the money that teams have available to them from a cap space perspective. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the Bulls are not paying Vucevic $15 million to not play for their franchise. No chance. They had to buy out D Wade after the failed 3 alpha season, but the circumstances around that were a bit different. Bulls traded Jimmy Butler, dumped Rajon Rondo. Keeping around a washed Dwayne Wade would have actually done more harm than good when they were going the full tanking route at that time. The Bulls aren't desperate enough to get rid of Vooch like they were with Wade back in 2017. Would they like to move on from Vucevic so they can prioritize the development of some of their other guys in the front court? Sure, but they would much rather hang on to him for this upcoming season, see if he's able to garner any trade interest closer to the deadline, and if not, let him play out his remaining year and wish him farewell when he hits free agency in 2026. I also wouldn't put it past the Bulls to actually extend him on a super team friendly deal, similar to what they did with Lonzo. Getting him on a new contract purely for the purpose of trading him in the offseason or later on just to try and get some value for him in return instead of letting him walk in free agency for nothing. But of course, you also run the risk of there still being no trade market for Vucevic at that time and you end up being stuck with him for even longer. I will say though, I am a little surprised that there isn't even minimal trade interest in Vucevic right now in the NBA. Like, I look at these teams who needed a big or still need bigs, the same teams who needed bigs at the deadline, and instead you've got the Lakers pursuing DeAndre Ayton, the Warriors evidently trying to sign old man Al Horford, the Suns getting all of their bigs through trades or through the draft and Kamal Malawach. I'm not saying that those guys aren't better fits for their respective teams, and some are on much more palatable contracts, but yeah, you would think a big man who was a walking double-double, had his best season in 4 years, and his most efficient offensive season of his career. No, that's not an exaggeration. He had the highest combined shooting splits and true shooting percentage of his career last season. He's an above-average passing big man who can act as a hub on offense, but also good enough of a shooter that can help space the floor. Like, yes, I know he's a liability on defense. Yes, I know he's about to be 35 years old. But teams not being interested in him whatsoever, when I do think on the right team, Vooch can actually be a big lift for a contender, that's surprising to me, especially for a player that's on an expiring contract. I mean, all this being said, if the Bulls are overvaluing Vucevic and demanding too much for him in a trade, which they've done in the past, then yeah, that's going to kill any trade market for him if teams aren't going to take you seriously in making a deal. My guess in all of this, as it relates to Vooch's future, my guess is he's still with the Bulls at the start of the season, and the Bulls are maybe able to trade him for pennies on the dollar by taking on another expiring contract where they probably get nothing of real value in return prior to the deadline. I say that though, but who knows? Instead of it being the Josh Giddey news that I'm expecting in the next 24 hours, we hear that Vucevic has been traded to the Warriors. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.